All right, let's jump right in. We're going to look at two sources today that, on the surface, have absolutely nothing in common. On one hand, you've got the personal memoir of a prince, detailing his life inside the most famous family on Earth. And on the other, an anonymous text that lays out this hidden global conspiracy to control how we all think. So, a royal and a revolutionary. But what if? What if they're actually telling the exact same story?
Just look at this. On the left, Prince Harry says he felt like a cartoon character, a puppet being used for a bit of a laugh. And on the right, this other source talks about something called the postage stamp consensus, a totally programmed reality where your own perception becomes a prison. I mean, it's the same idea, right? Both are describing a life where someone else is pulling the strings.
So that really brings us to the big question for this whole explainer. What is the link here? What could possibly connect the real-life experience of a royal family member breaking free with this huge theory about a secret power structure controlling everything? Well, it turns out the answer to that is all about control.
Okay, so let's start with part one, the first major theme connecting these two worlds, the gilded cage. And what's wild is that both sources describe this feeling of being trapped inside a reality that looks absolutely perfect from the outside, but is actually deeply fake.
What's really telling here are the words Harry uses. He's standing in this historic royal place, but he doesn't see history. He doesn't see tradition. He sees stagecraft. He sees the work of a clever architect. For him, the whole thing feels constructed, like a performance he was just born into. Now take that idea of a constructed set and compare it to this wild term from our other source, the postage stamp consensus. It's this idea that the reality we're all fed is actually super narrow, like the size of a postage stamp, and it's completely programmed. It's a perceptual download that starts the moment you're born, building a prison for your mind. And the crazy part is, you don't even know you're in it.
And this is where it all clicks together. Harry's personal world of stagecraft and perfect castles is basically his own version of that postage stamp consensus. Both sources are painting a picture of a carefully managed reality. On the outside, everything looks amazing, orderly, perfect. But underneath it all, it's a tightly controlled stage, designed to keep everyone playing their part.
So if you're living on a stage, how do the directors keep everybody in line? Well, that leads us right into part two, the battle for control of the story, a war for your mind.
Wow. This quote from Harry is just so raw. He's talking about how the media treats his family, and it's not just that they're nosy. It's a cruel game to him. He says they went from being seen as divine to insects whose wings could be plucked for fun. It's this profound feeling of being dehumanized. He wasn't just being reported on, he felt like he was being hunted.
So how does this kind of manipulation work on a massive scale? Well, the anonymous source gives us a name for it. It's called problem, reaction, solution. The theory is pretty simple and pretty sneaky. You secretly create a problem. Why? Because you want a specific public reaction, usually fear or outrage. That reaction then makes people demand a solution, the very same solution you were planning to introduce all along.
Let's just break that down. Step one, you create the problem. A crisis, a threat, a scandal, anything to get people's attention. Step two, you stoke the public reaction. You use the media to fan the flames of fear and outrage. And finally, step three, when everyone is screaming, do something, you step in and offer your pre-planned solution. It's a classic playbook. So what does this look like in real life? Well, here's a perfect example from Harry's own experience. A newspaper manufactures a problem, Harry's drugs shame. They create this story by taking photos of him at a charity visit to a rehab center and twisting them into what he calls libelous fiction. Suddenly, the narrative is set, Prince Harry, the troubled royal. And this plugs directly back into that bigger theory. The anonymous source argues this is exactly how the system keeps people in check. Anyone who steps out of line, anyone who challenges the official narrative, gets targeted with abuse and ridicule. So Harry's very personal, painful experience with a manufactured scandal becomes a perfect case study for this much larger strategy of controlling the story.
Okay, so what happens when you realize you're trapped on a stage and that there's a war being waged for your mind? According to both of our sources, you plan your escape.
And let me tell you, when they decided to leave, they did not mess around. You can see it here. This was not a slow fade. It was a fast, clean break. In just 6 months, they went from being senior working royals to being financially on their own in a completely different country. This was a full-blown rebellion.
And just look at the stakes involved.
£6 million. That was the estimated price tag every single year that they had to find themselves just to pay for security after it was taken away. Breaking out of that gilded cage came with a very, very high price.
You know what? This act of rebellion actually has a name in our other source. It's called becoming a renegade mind. These are the folks who, according to this text, wake up. They finally see the bars of the perceptual prison and they just decide, nope, I'm not going to live in here anymore. They are the dissenters.
And this really gets to the heart of it all. The system, the cage, it only works because people cooperate with it. So the Great Escape isn't about fighting the system head-on. It's about simply withdrawing your consent. It's a two-step move. First, you have to see through the lies, and then you have to summon the backbone to act. It starts inside your own head, and that's what creates the change on the outside.
So, what do we get when we put a prince's emotional memoir next to a massive conspiracy text? We're left with this really powerful final thought about reality, about stories, and about who gets to be in control of them. And this is where it all comes back to you, right? The big theme here is authorship. Are you writing your own story, or are you just playing a part that somebody else wrote for you? It's really a challenge to all of us to look at our own lives and try to spot the stagecraft, to see the postage stamp consensus that might be shaping our own world, whether that's at work, in our social lives, or just in the media we consume every day.
And we're going to end on this one last incredible thought from Prince Harry himself. He basically argues that his memory, his personal, subjective experience, is just as true as any objective fact. He even calls things like chronology fables we tell ourselves. I mean, that's a pretty radical idea. It's a claim that the stories we choose to believe about the world and about ourselves are what actually create our reality. And that leaves us with one final big question. If reality is just a story, who's holding the pen?